Athena is revered as the goddess of wisdom and justice, but what if I told you she could be the worst villain in Greek mythology? Stick with me as we unravel the dark secrets and untold stories that might completely change your perspective on her. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war in Greek mythology, is often celebrated for her strategic virtues and protective role towards heroes and cities. However, a deeper analysis of her interactions with figures like Odysseus and Perseus reveals a more controversial aspect: her propensity for divine manipulation. While these actions may initially seem benevolent or justified by the defense of the greater good, they can also be interpreted as power games that shape destinies to serve her own interests. Let's start with Odysseus, the cunning king of Ithaca, whose epic journey home in the Odyssey is filled with interventions from Athena. She not only guides and protects Odysseus but often manipulates situations in her favor, thus ensuring the fulfillment of her divine objectives. For example, when Odysseus faces Poseidon's wrath, it is Athena who intervenes, calming the waves and altering perceptions of others to ensure the safety of her protégé. This manipulation extends beyond the hero, affecting other characters and events to secure Odysseus' return and the restoration of his order and power in Ithaca. Perseus, another favorite hero of Athena, offers an even more direct example of divine manipulation. From the outset, Athena instrumentalizes Perseus in his mission to decapitate Medusa, providing him with a polished shield to use as a mirror to avoid the Gorgon's deadly gaze. While this act may be seen as assistance, it also sets Perseus on a trajectory of confrontations and challenges that serve Athena's purposes, primarily the elimination of a rival and the subsequent use of Medusa's head as a weapon. These interactions raise questions about the degree of autonomy and freedom of the heroes within their own myths. Through Athena, we see a figure who not only guides but also controls and reconfigures. Her influence is a kind of web that connects the destinies of various figures, turning their heroic journeys into extensions of her divine will. Manipulation, in this context, becomes a tool of governance and strategy, where heroes are pawns on a larger chessboard dominated by deities. When considering these stories in a critical light, Athena transforms from a mere patron of reason and justice into a mistress of manipulation and control. This side of her personality questions the morality of her interventions, and challenges the notion of pure heroism in Greek myths. By revealing these layers, the viewer is invited to re-evaluate not only the figure of Athena but also the nature and impact of divine actions on human destiny. Athena's approach to heroes and their destinies reflects a complexity that transcends the simple duality of good and evil, revealing a spectrum of motivations and consequences that are deeply human despite their divine origin. By exploring these themes, we unwrap not only the tales of ancient deities but also the eternal inquiries into power, ethics, and the intersection of both in shaping myths that still resonate with modern audiences. Love ancient history? Like and subscribe now to discover more secrets. At the core of Greek mythological narratives, the figure of Athena, often revered as the goddess of wisdom and just warfare, reveals a controversial and perhaps dark facet in one of her most emblematic episodes, the transformation of Medusa. This event not only outlines the complexity of the divine character but also instigates a profound analysis of the nuances of power and morality that permeate the gods of Olympus. The story begins with Medusa, initially a mortal priestess in Athena's temple whose beauty was unparalleled. However, this beauty attracted the lust of Poseidon, the god of the seas, leading to a violation in Athena's sacred temple. Athena's reaction to this transgressive act is where controversy arises. Instead of punishing Poseidon, the goddess directs her wrath at Medusa, transforming her into a monster with serpents for hair, whose gaze could petrify anyone who looked upon her. Athena's act can be interpreted as an abuse of heightened power. Rather than seeking justice for her priestess, who was clearly a victim, Athena chooses a punishment that seems to reflect either mortal envy or a need to purge the profane from her temple, punishing the victim more severely than the perpetrator. This choice raises questions about the morality of the gods and whether their actions are justified by divine authority or are, essentially, character flaws masked by immortality. The complexity of this episode increases when considering that, in many versions of the story, Medusa is not only a victim of Poseidon but also of Athena. The punishment she receives could be seen as a defense mechanism to prevent any other entity from challenging the purity of the temple, or as a brutal lesson about the consequences of disobedience, even involuntary, to the gods. However, such an interpretation casts a shadow over the figure of Athena, traditionally seen as a goddess of strict morals and protector of cities and the arts of defensive warfare. Furthermore, this act can be viewed from the perspective of perpetuating power and control. By transforming Medusa, Athena may have sought to establish an extreme example of what could happen to those who were disloyal or disobedient. In this sense, Medusa's transformation serves not only as a punishment for herself but as a display of strength and a warning to others who might question or challenge divine authority. Thus, the story of Medusa, far from being a mere myth about monsters and heroism, reveals itself as a study on power, justice, and the moral ambiguities of those who hold authority. It is questioned, therefore, whether the treatment afforded to Medusa was an act of divine justice or an example of how power, even divine, can be misapplied. In revisiting this narrative, we are led to reflect on the implications of power use and the complexities of moral judgment, even among beings considered omniscient and supreme. At the heart of Athenian democracy, where rational thought and justice were valued above all else, emerge episodes that challenge our understanding of the deity who should embody these ideals, Athena. The goddess of wisdom and war is often revered as a fair protector, but her role in the trial of Orestes reveals a more controversial and manipulative aspect, similar to what we observe in the infamous episode involving Medusa. This case not only exposes the complexity of Athena's character but also illustrates a pattern of divine influence that can be interpreted as a subversion of justice. Orestes, son of Agamemnon and Clytemnestra, was accused of matricide after killing his own mother, an act committed in revenge for his father's murder. Under the logic of a vicious cycle of familial vengeance, this act would raise complex questions about justice and morality that, in theory, would require a balanced and impartial trial. However, Athena intervenes decisively. By founding the Areopagus, a court to judge not only Orestes but also future homicides, Athena establishes a new legal precedent. However, her decision to absolve Orestes, despite the gravity of his crime, can be seen as an act of divine bias. Athena, arguing that the death of a man, Agamemnon, carried more weight than that of a woman, Clytemnestra, imposes her personal and somewhat patriarchal view on the case. Here, she not only manipulates the final outcome of the trial but also shapes the law to reflect her own ideologies and preferences. This interference questions the impartiality expected of the gods and suggests a use of power that favors personal agendas, something similar to what happened when she transformed Medusa into a monster, an act also shrouded in controversy and moral interpretation. Analyzing these episodes through a modern lens, we see Athena as a figure who, despite being the goddess of justice, seems to operate within a morality that privileges certain values and individuals over others. Her involvement in the cases of Orestes and Medusa not only reveals a pattern of behavior that can be considered villainous, but also highlights the inherent complexity and moral ambiguity in Greek mythology. This obliges us to reconsider not only the figure of Athena but also the role of the gods in human justice. Thus, by bringing to light such controversial aspects, we realize how rich and multifaceted Greek mythology is, offering us diverse perspectives on justice, power, and morality. The figure of Athena, often seen only as a heroic and wise goddess, actually possesses nuances that place her in an ambiguous, sometimes even dark role in the Greek pantheon. Studying such narratives not only enriches our understanding of ancient culture but also offers valuable reflections on the moral and ethical dilemmas that continue to resonate today. Athena, revered for her wisdom and justice, also reveals a severe and relentless side in various legends of Greek mythology. One of the most striking examples of this aspect is the myth of Arachne. Arachne was a talented mortal weaver who challenged the goddess of wisdom herself to a weaving competition. This act of defiance, though audacious, was merely the prelude to a punishment that many consider extremely severe, revealing Athena's capacity for cruelty when confronted with insolence. The confrontation between Athena and Arachne was not merely a simple competition of craft skills. It was a clash of egos and a test of divine boundaries. Arachne not only challenged Athena but did so with a confidence bordering on arrogance, believing herself superior even to the goddess. The weaver chose to portray in her fabrics scenes that exposed the scandals and flaws of the gods, further provoking Athena's wrath. This choice was not just a technical challenge but a direct affront to the authority and dignity of the Olympic gods. Athena's response to this affront was swift and brutal. After seeing the fabrics displaying divine transgressions, the goddess not only defeated Arachne in the weaving competition but also transformed her into a spider, condemning her to weave endlessly. This act symbolizes eternal punishment for a momentary challenge. This aspect of the myth highlights a disturbing characteristic of Athena: her willingness to impose disproportionate punishments as a means of maintaining control and order among mortals and gods. The severity of Athena's punishment can be interpreted as a reflection of the tensions between divine power and human autonomy. In the broader context of Greek mythology, gods often intervened in mortal affairs, but Arachne's case stands out for the extremity of the divine response. Instead of merely demonstrating her superiority or teaching a moderate lesson, Athena chose a punishment that stripped Arachne of her humanity, turning her existence into an eternal reminder of submission to the gods. This episode raises profound questions about justice and power in Greek mythology. Through the myth of Arachne, Athena is portrayed as a figure who, while capable of offering wisdom, also exercises relentless vengeance against those she perceives as challengers. This challenges the often celebrated image of Athena as a fair and measured goddess, adding layers of complexity to her persona that evoke both admiration and fear. The myth of Arachne not only enriches our understanding of Athena but also serves as a dark reminder of the severe consequences that can arise from challenging divine authority. Often celebrated as the goddess of wisdom, warfare strategy, and protector of cities, Athena embodies a figure of immense complexity in Greek mythology. In many myths, she is the tireless guardian, the strategic mind behind great heroes and prosperous cities. However, upon exploring other layers of these stories, a darker facet is revealed. Athena is not a one-dimensional goddess. Her history is punctuated by actions that challenge the perception of simple and pure morality, leading us to question, is she a protector of men or a predator of their destinies? We begin with the myth of Medusa, one of the most revealing in terms of Athena's duality. Originally a beautiful priestess in Athena's temple, Medusa is a victim of violation by Poseidon. Athena's reaction, however, is shocking. She transforms Medusa into a monster with snakes in place of hair, whose gaze petrifies anyone who faces her. This action can be interpreted as a defense of the violated sanctuary, a protection of sacred norms, but it also casts Athena in the role of a tormentor, punishing Medusa more severely than Poseidon himself. This act raises profound questions about justice and retribution, revealing a predatory facet beneath the surface of protection. Another episode that complicates Athena's image is her interaction with Arachne. The young Arachne, a skilled weaver, dares to challenge the goddess by claiming that her skill is superior. The confrontation between the two, although centered on a weaving contest, hides a competition of power and pride. When Arachne unquestionably excels in her work, Athena transforms her into a spider, condemning her to weave eternally. This myth can be seen as an example of the goddess protecting her position and reputation, but it also reveals a vengeful and predatory behavior where punishment outweighs transgression. Furthermore, Athena's role in the Trojan War also shows her ability to manipulate and alter destinies to favor her protégés, such as in the case of Odysseus. Her active participation in the conflict, guiding and protecting her favorites, demonstrates her role as a strategist and protector. However, these same actions often result in suffering and destruction for the enemies, painting her as a figure who prevails over the weak and decides the fate of mortals, often in a cruel manner. In summary, Athena represents a divine archetype that does not fit neatly into the molds of good or evil. She is a reflection of human nature in its complexity, capable of great benevolence and protection, but also of vengeance and cruelty. The analysis of her character in Greek myths forces us to confront the ambiguities of morality, reminding us that even the most revered figures have their dark aspects. In pondering Athena, we are invited to reflect on the essence of justice, power, and protection, making her a fascinating and enigmatic figure in the rich tapestry of Greek mythology. In the pantheon of Greek gods, Athena is often seen as the goddess of wisdom, just warfare, and craftsmanship. However, a more critical look at her role in the Trojan War reveals a more calculating and manipulative facet, distant from the idealized image commonly attributed to her. This mythological episode offers an intriguing glimpse of how even the gods can be moved by personal interests and vanities, using humanity and cosmic events as pieces in a game of divine power. During the Trojan conflict, which defined an era in Greek mythology, Athena was not merely a bystander or a mentor to the heroes, but an active participant who manipulated circumstances to ensure that the outcome favored her. One of the clearest manifestations of this manipulation occurs when she deceives Hector, the noble Trojan warrior. Disguised as his brother Deiphobus, Athena convinces Hector to face Achilles, leading him to his certain death. This act was not only a demonstration of support for Achilles but also a way to influence the outcome of the war, ensuring that glory and victory fell to the Achaeans, whom she favored. Furthermore, her rivalry with other gods also stood out during the war. The episode of the Judgment of Paris was a direct precursor to the conflict, where Paris, Prince of Troy, awarded the Apple of Discord to Aphrodite instead of Athena. Athena's resentment towards Troy can be seen as a driving force for her actions during the war. She was not only responding to a personal offense but also reaffirming her superiority among the gods and before mortals. This illustrates how divine motivations can be both personal and political, reflecting the internal conflicts of Olympus. Additionally, Athena used her intelligence and cunning to influence not only the heroes but also other gods. Her involvement in the famous episode of the Trojan horse, suggesting to Odysseus the creation of a trap that would ultimately determine the end of Troy, is an example of her skill in strategy and manipulation. Here, Athena transcends the role of a mere goddess of just warfare, presenting herself as a mistress of deceit and psychological warfare, where victory is achieved not only by strength but by deception. This examination of Athena in the Trojan War allows us to reconsider not only her character but also the narratives that often glorify the gods as paragons of virtues. Mythology, in this sense, serves as a mirror to the complexities of human and divine behavior, where the lines between heroes and villains are often blurred. Athena, at her core, is a reminder that even the gods can be fallible, guided by desires and strategies as human as those they govern. Delving into Greek mythology, it's impossible to ignore the intricate power dynamics and rivalries that define the pantheon. One of the most emblematic rivalries is between Athena and Poseidon, a conflict that reveals not only the personalities of the involved gods but also the values and politics of the time. At the heart of this dispute is the city of Athens, a prize that both gods ardently desired, but for very different reasons. The story begins with the competition between Athena and Poseidon to determine who would be the patron of the then unnamed city, and bestow upon it the most useful gift. Poseidon, the god of the sea, thrust his trident into the ground, from which sprang a saltwater spring, a grand gesture but impractical for the citizens. In contrast, Athena offered an olive tree, a symbol of peace and prosperity, whose fruit and wood had multiple practical and symbolic uses. Athena's offering was deemed more valuable, and she won the right to name the city Athens. However, this episode was just the beginning of a long series of clashes between the two gods. The rivalry extended to various aspects of Greek life, including the famous Trojan War. Poseidon, still resentful over the loss of patronage of Athens, often found himself at odds with Athena during the conflict. While Athena supported the Greeks, Poseidon wavered in his allegiance but often showed favor to the Trojans, exacerbating tensions. This dispute between Athena and Poseidon can be seen as a reflection of the political tensions of ancient Greece. Each city-state, polis, had its own divine patron, and the political alliances between these cities were often mirrored in the myths and legends they narrated. The rivalry between Athens and coastal cities, many of which revered Poseidon, is a clear example of this dynamic. The myths, therefore, were not just stories, they were a means of expressing and resolving real conflicts of power and influence. Through this lens, Athena's rivalry with Poseidon tells us much about how the ancient Greeks viewed themselves and their gods. Powerful figures, certainly, but also deeply human in their flaws and motivations. The conflict between Athena's strategic wisdom and Poseidon's raw, sometimes whimsical power resonates to this day, a reminder that even the gods can be consumed by earthly desires and rivalries. This is just one of many examples of how the ancient Greeks used their myths to shape and understand their world, making them not only fascinating stories but also essential tools for civic and moral education. She is often celebrated for her virtues and her protective role regarding the city of Athens. However, A closer analysis of some of her interactions with other gods and mortals reveals more controversial aspects of her nature, particularly in her interaction with Hephaestus, the god of fire and metalworking. This specific episode from Greek mythology offers an intriguing perspective on issues of consent and morality, aspects that complicate Athena's traditionally virtuous image. The myth unfolds when Hephaestus, driven by an unrequited desire for Athena, attempts to force her into an intimate act. Athena, quick and astute, manages to avoid the contact, but the episode does not end without consequences. Hephaestus's seed falls to the earth, giving rise to Erecthonius, a figure who would later become important for the city of Athens. Here, the complexity of consent becomes evident, while Athena escapes the harassment. The interaction yields significant results, leading to questions about the moral implications of both gods' actions. The treatment of this mythological narrative reveals not only Athena's ability to defend herself and maintain her integrity, but also prompts reflection on Hephaestus's conduct. In many modern interpretations, this story is viewed in a critical light, questioning Hephaestus's actions and, by extension, the responses of the deities and society to the issue of consent. This episode contributes to an understanding of Athena as a more ambiguous and multifaceted figure, one who not only faces challenges but whose stories are permeated with complex ethical questions. Furthermore, this story adds a layer of depth to the already complex web of relationships among the gods of Olympus. Athena's reaction to Hephaestus's unwanted advance and the subsequent ramifications of this act reveal the tensions and power dynamics within the Greek pantheon. This illustrates how Greek myths often use divine interactions to explore themes of morality, justice, and the ethics of interpersonal relationships, reflecting and questioning the values of ancient Greek society. By re-examining figures like Athena through these narratives, modern audiences are invited to reflect on contemporary notions of justice, consent, and morality. The stories of gods and goddesses, with their complex interactions and moral dilemmas, continue to offer rich allegories for understanding our own ethical and social dilemmas. Therefore, instead of simply labeling Athena as the ultimate villain, it is more productive to see her as a symbol of the inherent contradictions of the human condition, a deity that encapsulates both wisdom and the moral complexities of her time. Within the Greek pantheon, Athena is often celebrated as the goddess of wisdom, warfare strategy, and justice. However, upon closer examination of her actions throughout various legends, it becomes apparent that her conduct is not as virtuous as it is often portrayed. Indeed, she shares a less admirable facet with goddesses like Hera and Aphrodite, vengeance. This video delves into the complexities of these goddesses, highlighting the subtlety and ferocity with which each manifests their divine wrath. Athena, for example, did not shy away from exacting severe vengeance upon those who defied her or disrespected her temple. The story of Medusa is a classic tale where Athena transforms a beautiful priestess into a monster simply for being violated by Poseidon in her temple. This act places Athena on a spectrum of vengeance that challenges her reputation as a fair and measured goddess. Comparatively, Hera, known for her jealous rage, often directed her fury against Zeus's mistresses and their illegitimate children, reflecting a pattern of personal and relentless vengeance. Aphrodite, on the other hand, though the ruler of love and beauty, also had her vengeful side, particularly when her vanity was threatened. The judgment of Paris is an illustrative example where she promises Paris the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen, only to secure her own victory as the fairest among Hera and Athena. This act triggers the Trojan War, showing that Aphrodite's vengeance, though less direct, had dramatic and far-reaching consequences. This analysis reveals a fascinating and sometimes unsettling dimension of Greek mythology, goddesses who, despite their domains of governance and protection, are driven by deeply human emotions such as jealousy, pride, and vengeance. Athena's vengeful behavior, when compared to Hera and Aphrodite, illustrates that even goddesses associated with morality and order can be equally petty and destructive. In summary, Greek mythology teaches us that the gods, though omnipotent, possessed flaws and human passions, reflecting the very paradoxes of human nature. Athena, Hera, and Aphrodite, though different in their domains and personalities, share an inclination for vengeance that reveals the complexities of their characters and the intricate web of relationships and rivalries on Olympus. By exploring these stories, we not only appreciate the richness of Greek mythology but also gain insights into emotions that transcend the age of myths, resonating to this day. To understand the figure of Athena in Greek mythology and her reception in modern culture, it is essential to unpack the layers of her embodiment and actions throughout the ages. Traditionally seen as the goddess of wisdom, war strategy, and protector of cities, especially Athens, Athena is a complex figure that defies the simplistic notion of hero or villain. Athena is born in an extraordinary manner, emerging fully armed from the head of Zeus. This birth symbolizes not only her connection to intelligence and strategy but also a detachment from traditional family ties, making her an independent and powerful figure. However, her independence and power do not come without controversy. In various stories, Athena supports heroes like Odysseus and Perseus, but she is also involved in episodes of vengeance and cruelty, such as transforming Medusa into a monster and punishing Arachne. The example of Arachne illustrates well how Athena can be perceived as a villain. Arachne, a talented weaver, challenged Athena to a weaving competition. Despite Arachne producing technically flawless fabric, Athena, driven by jealousy and anger, not only destroys Arachne's work but also transforms her into a spider. This act of brutality questions Athena's image as a fair goddess and promoter of wisdom, pointing to a nature that is also vengeful and relentless. In the context of war, Athena is often portrayed as a strategist rather than a bloodthirsty goddess like Ares. However, her blessing for those she deems worthy often results in bloodshed and tragedies, as in the case of the Trojan War. Athena supports the Greeks, decisively influencing moments such as the offering of the Trojan horse, a stratagem that led to the total destruction of Troy. The perception of Athena has changed substantially, especially when evaluating her decisions and actions through the prism of modern ethics. It is possible to argue that Athena, like many figures from mythology, does not fit neatly into the categories of hero or villain. She is a reflection of human qualities and flaws, embodying ideals and also the inherent conflicts of human nature. In a critical review of her actions, we see a figure that can be both revered and questioned, depending on the perspective adopted, highlighting the richness and complexity of her legacy in modern culture.